I'm just going to pull out some like key massive highlights. We started off with discussing, that there's a level of attainability to aligning who we are with our potential in this world, ultimately. And that the Alter Rebbe introduces 3 different types of people: the tzaddik, the rasha, and the beinoni, who they are, how they function. And ultimately, what we go to from this concept of tzaddik, rasha, and beinoni is we go to understanding what's the inside of us. Like fine, 3 categories of people, but what's going on inside of us? And the reason it's important to understand what's going on inside of us is because we struggle as humans, and because obviously since we're struggling and we want to maximize our potential, we want to live up to our godly reason for existence. And as we discussed, a few of us discussed before, right, in the beginning of before class started formally, we're discussing how this is like the day-to-day struggle, right, of real stuff that we're going through, that it's challenging and uncomfortable. And how do I go within to find strength to override what my stressors are and what my things are that are just not allowing me to maximize my potential, not allowing me to bring Kedusha into the world where I'm able to. And that can be like lethargy, that can be overwhelmness, like being overwhelmed, not overwhelmness. It could be many, many different things, right? And so we said, in order to understand that, let's understand what we're made of. So we're made of a nefesh of Bahamas and a nefesh elokis, a godly soul that's transcendent and selfless, and this animal soul that's like super like everything about me, right? Self-preservation, worried about myself. And they're both necessary. They're both how Hashem made us. And we discussed, like in class 1, understanding that the reason there is this struggle is because that's how we're created. So if you're struggling, pat yourself on the back. You are alive, you're healthy, you are well, you're exactly the way you're supposed to be. And then we discussed how the godly soul and the animal soul both comprise of the 10 sefirot, the intellectual ones, the emotional ones, what I think, what I feel about what I think. And then from there, after we get through understanding the animal soul and the godly soul and what they're made of, we say that's all that's going on inside of us. But how does these souls express themselves, right? And then we said through the lavushim, and we said those are the thought, speech, and action, which ties very much back into the beginning of Tanya, with Alter Rebbe says this is about how to kikari velecha, make this very close to you, thought, speech, and action, right? And we talked about that in the beginning. And so now we're starting to see, okay, well, this is how it plays out in how I behave and how I operate and how I feel and how I think. And we also said towards the end of this last class, that the Nefesh HaBahamis and Nefesh HaLokis are constantly in struggle. They're constantly working on understand, like every single time they have to express themselves either in thought, speech, or action, there is a struggle going on. Okay. We talked about where they receive their energy from, right? And we talked about klipas naiga, which is neutral levels of non-holiness, and what we need to do about that and how we can elevate it. And we talked about shalosh klipas tmeis, the things that are usher, that are not for us to elevate, right? We're not going to elevate a cheeseburger. We talked about that as well, and where that falls out in my thing. Now, I realized that last class we ended up kind of struggling. We ended up struggling with this concept of active thoughts and passive thoughts. And we're saying that machshava is a garment, but we said, like, what does that mean? And what do I do about that? So we said very briefly, which I would like to go into a drop, because it's going to be a springboard for further discussion and further things that we need to tackle with the tools from the Tanya. But what we discussed is that the machshava, right, that's the passive pop-up thoughts that happen, things that, how many thoughts do we have a day? Like, tons going through our mind. As women, we are pulled in so many directions at so many times. And some of those thoughts may be a little less than wonderful, that are popping up in our head, and we can't necessarily control them, right? And that is not the lavush of machshava. The lavush of machshava, the garment of machshava that you're putting on, that's you're expressing, is when you're allowing yourself, and many of us do this, right? Allow thought to percolate and allow it to take up space and allow it to grow extensions of the story in our brain. I think sometimes as women, we're very professional at this, the garment of machshava. And so that's really the difference between a willful thought and things that just, like a pop-up, you're on your computer and there's a pop-up ad. The pop-up ad, it's there. Do you always have to click on it, look at it, analyze it, decide if it's for you or not? Most of the time you have a pop-up ad, what do? You shut it and you move it on. And really, that's what we need to do with the pop-up ads in order, because what happens if we don't ignore that pop-up ad, that machshava that pops into our mind, if we zoom in on it and give it attention and time and energy, well, now we have a problem. Now it becomes a lavash. Now it becomes a garment. Now we're allowing our mind to go there. And one of the ladies shared in the beginning of class, and Miriam Fishman shared in the beginning of class, that during this week, there was something that came up and there was an emotion that was very, very strong. And it took time and intentionality and mindfulness to be like, I can use this tool, the next tool that we talked about, which is what? And the Alter Rebbe basically introduces this as the first major tool. Now that we understand where the struggle takes place and that the struggle is part of who we are and everything else that's going on, well, now that we understand that, we have this incredible tool. And that's that at the end of the day, our intellect, our mind can control how we feel. Now, this is not an easy feat. And now tonight, we're going to actually unpack why not only is it not an easy feat, but the Alter Rebbe is then going to go on to give us more tools, because really, it's not a sustainable one. Because even if, as I challenged you at the end of last class, to have more moments of Ma'ashalat al-Lev, right? Even if I'm allowed to have more moments of that, at the end of the day, can I do it always, all the time, for every situation? If any of you can, please let me know. We got to talk. I have yet to meet someone who is able to do that. Because at the end of the day, now we have a problem, is that this is a great tool, but it's not always able to be used for every situation. Sometimes my emotions are too big. Sometimes I have to switch where my emotions are coming from. Sometimes I have to check in with myself and say, well, what's going on? What's causing this emotion? Why am I keep tripping in this area? Why am I struggling? So yes, while this is an amazing tool, we're going to understand tonight, and we're going to get two more tools. Emer Hashem tonight, God willing, tonight, two more powerful tools to understand deeper what this means for us. But before we do that, and before we discuss the problem with exclusively relying on Ma'ach Shalat al-Lev, I want to mention a point that really came up after class. I wasn't planning on talking about it, but after class, I had a follow-up conversation. As I mentioned before, if there's ever a subject or a question or something that comes up, or something that maybe I didn't make very clear, because I do that sometimes. I think I'm going to make everything clear, but it's not, I may make a mistake here. So anytime I do that, I follow up with me. But one person followed up with me at the end of last class and mentioned to me something powerful. They said, you know what? It was Monday night. I was cranky. I had a long day at work. I was done. Class, Tanya, do I have a brain space for it? Is it where I'm at as a person? And I really wasn't sure. Just wasn't sure. Can I do it? Do I have the space for it? What's going on? And hold on a second. Someone's unmuted and there's some background noise. Some Sterni, if you don't mind muting yourself. Sorry for calling you out. I just can't. Sorry. Thank you. Okay. So do I have the energy for it? And here's a point to answer. So the person went on to say, I got on anyway. So I was like, let me check it out. Because again, you can jump on Zoom. You can just jump off of Zoom. No offense. No one's bothered by it, right? Everyone does what works for them. We certainly understand. Life is diverse and dynamic. So this person said, I jumped on, and after an hour, I felt so energized. And I realized after they mentioned that to me, that's the truth, that when we learn Torah, when we learn Chassidus, it really is like nourishment. I say some people take a vitamin B shot. Some people have to learn a little Tanya and have a little Chassidus. I'm not against vitamin B. I just want to clarify. No, but some people have to take a wheatgrass shot to give them the energy, or, espresso, whatever. Torah and Chassidus energizes us on a neshama level. And I realized that after class, I was a shkachal pratis, this person mentioned it to me, because the truth is, there's so often that I'll go into, let's say it's a late night class at 7 p.m. It's a 2-hour class. I'm tired. I had a long day. And in the beginning of class, I'm like, should I have espresso? Should I not? Maybe I won't have it. I want to sleep tonight. But then after I get out of class, I'm so energized. And the truth is that that's a point that Tanya, the Alter Rebbe, mentions after he discusses where both the neshamas get their energy from. Obviously, both the Eibush are different parts, different sides. The Alter Rebbe goes on to explain that Torah learning, when we learn Torah, and especially for us, Torah Chassidus is like the depth of the Torah that's so rich. When we learn it, really, we are nourishing and sustaining our neshama. So if you want a wheatgrass shot for your neshama, you're feeling lethargic and uninspired. So sometimes we're lethargic and inspired. It's the hardest time to get online and learn Torah. But literally, it is what nourishes and sustains us, because it's a unity between our neshama, which is a part of Hashem, and Hashem. And so it's when we have that unity, that bond, it's just like our source is connected, like we're plugged in. So kudos to you ladies, 30 ladies carving out night time at night. I'm sure no one just sat on the couch and getting manicures and, relaxing all day. I'm sure the to-do list was long, and the to-do list that's for after this class that didn't get done yet is also long, right? We all know. But at the end of the day, we are giving ourselves the biggest gift. And the more we nourish ourselves, as Gittel mentioned in the beginning of class, the more than we can give others. So massive yesher kayach, and we'll move forward to understand how the Alter Rebbe looks at our Beinoni. We're back to revisiting our Beinoni. We're back to discussing this power of Mayach Shalat Alev, and we're going to even discuss how maybe it's not always perfect. But before we do, and I kind of gave that teaser before, the Alter Rebbe goes on in the next little section to discuss how the Beinoni handles the day-to-day grind with humans. So you don't have to reveal yourself now, but if you've ever felt, and these are literally in the words of the Tanya, animosity towards someone, you don't have to raise your hand if you don't want to, okay? But if you relate, you can wink. If you've ever felt any sort of hatred, if you've ever had anger towards anyone, right? If you've ever held a grudge, if that has ever happened to you, the Alter Rebbe says, hey, let's talk. I get it. This is true. For those solutions, the power of Mayach Shalat Alev literally could transform those emotions. Yeah, I feel animosity. I feel a grudge. Maybe once I was angry at my spouse, right? Maybe. I don't know. Some of you may never have been. Maybe once or twice. It's happened. 22 years, I've been a little angry. Maybe I had someone that I was holding a grudge against. They did that to me 10 years ago. I still remember. It still bothers me. It still hurts. What does the Alter Rebbe go on and explain? That when we utilize this tool of Mayach Shalat Alev, what we actually can do is transform the way we look at the other person with kindness and disproportionate love. What is this disproportionate love? Because I get it, the kindness. Okay, I could say, look, nabach, misken or miskena, I'm angry towards her, or I have a grudge towards her, or maybe I have some animosity towards her. But I could think intellectually what else is going on in that person's mind. I could put my emotions in check and say, Manya, get over yourself. But I could get to the point where I have a kindness to the point that it can lead to disproportionate love, that I'm genuinely loving that person. Gosh, that seems super high level. How do I do that? Okay. And again, we're saying this is for ourselves. This is for our spouses. This is even for our, whoever we have, our mothers-in-law. Now, disclaimer, I love my mother-in-law. We get along really well. Thank God. I'm very, very blessed. She's a great inspiration for me on a very, very real, practical level. When I came into the family, I was blown away what a trailblazer she was amongst Chabad Shluchos, a leader and a teacher. And what can I say? So I use that term mother-in-law, not for my mother-in-law. So, but there are people who sometimes their mother-in-law gets on their nerves. Not mine, Baruch Hashem. I'm very, very blessed. Okay. But really, with a little bit of Mayach Shalat Alev, Alter Rebbe was saying, the Beinoni can work on himself, his thought, his speech, and action. And he can shift how he feels, the inside, what's going on. And the Alter Rebbe says, even when greatly pained. Now, remember we said in the beginning, when we first talked about the opening of Tanya, the Alter Rebbe does not use words that are just for drama. Every single vav was intentional. Every single word was intentional. So even when you're greatly pained by someone, if you utilize allowing your mind into a place, then you can get there. And that's, again, a very, very high level. But how does the Beinoni get there? And so the Alter Rebbe says, well, first of all, it starts with this. Sormei Rav Asetai. Basically, we know this. We've heard this in every parenting book, in every Shalom Bayis workshop. You want to focus on the Ra, the negative, or you want to just do good. So this is how we work on ourselves to get there. How can we do it? Yes, we can get there in a machshava, dibur, and maisa. How? The Alter Rebbe says, guess what? We have bechira. We have free will. We have the ability at every given moment to choose. And that, by the way, talk about empowerment, talk about victimhood. This is empowering. You mean someone who hurt me, I can, through utilizing this incredible tool that Chassidus gives me, I can override it to feel love towards them, to stay away from the negative and focus on the positive. Seems like high level stuff. But the author was saying, yes, it's possible. And what it does is it actually will shift the emotions to be the opposite. And the author says, even when you feel the opposite, you can get there. That is a mind-boggling takeaway. Think of someone in the past, maybe not this year, 5 years ago, maybe someone from your childhood that hurt you, that brought negative feelings. We all have that. We've all met those people. And sometimes we meet them multiple times. And sometimes they're in our family. And we love them, but we may not like them right now, right? Again, if you don't relate to this at all, no worries. But if ever met someone or had someone that had an interaction with someone in your family, then you'll get what I'm saying. And again, but at the end of the day, it can feel really awkward. Because what does it feel like? You feel like a faker. You feel like a faker. I'm going to pretend in my dibur, in my mice, I'm going to be nice to a person that I know deep down hurt me. Now, by the way, this is not called being a victim. This is not called being a shmata. This is not called allowing people to walk all over you. We could have another conversation about that. But it's understanding how much control and power we do have. Okay? And again, to me, I find this very empowering. To me, I find that it's like, oh, I have this level of, there's so many areas of life we can't control, but in this area, there's something I can proactively do about the people who get under my skin. Okay? And what's interesting is there was a chassid, very famous chassid named Reb Nissen Nemenov, and it was said about him that the Rebbe said about him that he's a Beinani. Now, we said what a Beinani is that they struggle on the inside, but behaviorally, externally, they look and act like a tzaddik, right? They're behavioral. You hold a tzaddik and a Beinani's behavior up, and it's the same. The difference is the Beinani struggles and the tzaddik's not struggling, okay? And so what happened was he was visiting family, and his little nephew came over to him and said, I heard you're a Beinani. Are you a Beinani? You know, kids, they don't wait to say what's politically correct, what's polite. You know, the parents are probably gasping, right? Kids just say the darndest things. And of course, the kid says, are you a Beinani? So he didn't say yes, no. He said, can you be a Beinani? Asked the child. And the child said, well, how? So he said, you can actually be one. So the child said, really? He said, yeah. All it takes is for 1 minute, don't do anything you're not supposed to do. So the child runs over the bookcase, grabs the Tehillim, sits down and says a parak Tehillim. And then the child comes back and he says to him, did you do anything you weren't supposed to do? He said, no, I said Tehillim. Even in his thoughts, he was thinking for 1 full minute about the Eibishter, about Tehillim. He says, great, now do this all the time. And then you'll be a Beinani. Again, high level. We ended last class with saying, let's have a few more Beinani moments in our life. We ended last class by explaining that the very famous yichud that I shared with you, that the Rebbe said that it's not category A or B or C. We have moments where we can maximize our potential. Think of something you have not had a desire to eat a lobster. You've never eaten a lobster. You won't eat a lobster. In that area, complete tzaddik, wonderful. So I'm giving it a silly example, but there's many examples. I've never robbed a bank. I've never thought of robbing a bank. I've never tried to plan robbing a bank in that area. Well, there you go. I am doing well. So we have to look for more moments where we could align what's going on inside of myself and my behavior on the outside. So it's not that I'm being an imposter. It's not that I'm being a hypocrite. It's not that I'm being a faker. It's I am choosing to allow my insides, what I'm struggling with, to stay in their place, and my outsides to express what Hashem wants out of me, what my potential is, positivity and light. And that, in essence, is the behavior of a Beinani. But now we're going to kind of go in to understanding something that's interesting. Here's where now we're going to say that while this is wonderful and hashtag life goals, it's not enough. Because who here could tell me that Mayach Shalot Alev is something they can practice all day, every day, always? If you can, I'd love to talk to you, like I said earlier, but really, it's not enough. And even if you could do it a lot, really is exhausting, right? To constantly be thinking of my active thoughts and my every action and every word that comes out of my mouth, to constantly be like allowing my brain and my intellect to override what I'm feeling and my outsides to not reflect what's going on inside with me, puts a tremendous, tremendous amount of pressure. Because I got to be on always. Every word, every step, everything. It's exhausting. Who could do that? So now we're back with the Alter Rebbe. And now the Alter Rebbe is going to say, well, 1 second, you need more tools. Because guess what? That is a wonderful tool. And we said it's a distinguishable tool of Chabad Hasidus philosophically. But it's not enough. So really, what we have to understand is that it's tricky to try to stay in that mode always. It's not really sustainable. Because my inside feels one thing, resentment, anger, frustration, overwhelmed, go with any negative emotion that we're feeling, hurt, insulted, angry, jealous. I mean, we could list, there's plenty of negative emotions that many of us may have ever once had in our life, right? But to always keep them suppressed, where's my feelings? What am I doing with them? So now enters new language. And here's 2 new terms, because really what we have to understand is, according to the Alter Rebbe, with the amount of Bechira and with Ismail Shalat Alev, the language of I lost control doesn't exist. It's actually I gave up control. And you know what? After I learned this in Tanya, I stopped telling my kids, don't lose control. I lost control. Are you losing control? I'd say, are you giving up your control? Because really it's a choice. And we have to remind ourselves that. So really what the Alter Rebbe is going to explain, that the tension internal of my feelings, let's say I'm feeling angry, resentful, frustrated, petty, whatever. And my behavior has to be here. Maybe I'm at a job interview. I have to suppress what I'm feeling. Or maybe day to day, I want to live like a Bainani. So my insides are here, my outsides are here. There's this intense tension when they cannot be aligned. So the goal is to try to align my insides, what I'm thinking, what I'm feeling, with my outsides, with my behavior. Because when we feel aligned, again, I think as women, we can relate to not always feeling aligned. We don't always do what we don't always have to do what we feel. I don't know how many of you feel amazing about waking up with a newborn in the middle of the night, or changing a diaper for the 30th time, or cleaning up the dishes again, or making dinner for people who may or may not eat it. I don't know how exciting, or shopping yet again, right? I don't know if we always our behavior feels with what it is. Or maybe a child who's pressing every single button again and again, and they know exactly which button. You know, there's always that kid who knows exactly where those buttons are and exactly how to press them multiple times. Well, I can't always act the way I want to. I can't always lose control or give up control. So what do I do about that tension? And we have to kind of resolve this tension, because Alter Rebbe will explain that if we don't resolve this tension, we'll either regress, right? Forget it. I went to this wonderful parenting workshop. I'm so inspired to never raise my voice again. And I learned 5 new tricks, and I tried them, and they're kind of working, and they work for a week, and they work for 2 weeks, and then they stop working. And I just going to backslide. Like, forget the inspiration from that workshop I went to, from that parenting thing I went to. Like, it's over. Like, or that Shalom Bayis workshop I went to that really inspired me. Like, can't do it. Overwhelmed, backslide. Okay. Option 2 is I'm really going to feel really down. Man, I set a new goal for myself. I can't keep it. I said I'm never going to scream again. By the way, I never made that achlata. I'm just letting you know. I like to keep things real. If I ever lose my cool, I remind myself that I'm helping my children, because one day when they're married, their wives may lose their cool, and they're going to know that their wife is normal. So there you go. Just keep that in mind. Keep it realistic, always realistic. So I'm just helping, really, I'm helping my future daughters-in-law. You know, that's really the goal. But what's my point? My point is, or either we're going to backslide and we're going to just forget I can't keep up with this resolution, or at the end of the day, I'm just going to kind of give up and feel really like, oh gosh, I couldn't do it. Right? But in comes a new goal. Change the way I feel inside. Because if I change my insides, do you remember I said the problem is I feel inside over here, but I have to behave like this? But what if I can work on building up how I feel inside so that it can start catching up with my behavior? Then I feel aligned. Then I feel at ease. And so we're going to get this incredible new tool. And the new tool is how can we create new feelings? How can I change the way I see a situation? Because our perception leads to how we feel, which leads to the conclusion, which leads to behavior. How can I change the way I feel? And I want to give you, well, I'll wait on this example, but hopefully I will get back to it shortly. So we all have different things we need to do. Not all of them do we always feel like doing. So should I wait till I feel inspired to cook dinner or shop, buy groceries to get it done? No, of course. Many times I just do it anyway. Maybe begrudgingly, maybe crankily, or with a cranky mood or attitude, and spreading that extra cranky vibe around the entire house and to the entire family, right? We share the feelings and the moods with everybody, right? We don't just keep it to ourselves. We're just like, whatever we're feeling, everyone's going to feel, right? Or we could change the way we feel. So in order to understand how we work on changing the feelings, and the Alter is going to give us two different ways to change how we feel. There is the longer, shorter way and the shorter, longer way. Okay. And why is it so important? We're going to call it, for clarity's sake, we're going to call it the longer way and the shorter way. So I'll give you a beautiful story. There's a beautiful story told in the Gemara. And it's told basically, it's such a wonderful story because it's told by so Rabbi Yeshua ben Chanina said, I was once like kind of fooled by a child. Okay, it's a very famous story, well known. It's in Gemara. And he said he was approaching a city and he said to a child, which is the quickest way to get there? This child said, well, what do you want? The longer, shorter way or the shorter, longer way? Well, obviously you want the shorter way. I want to get there shorter. So he says, so I told the child the shorter way. And I started going through the shorter way. Suddenly there were orchards in my way. It was impassable. I saw the city. It was right there. Couldn't get there. So I retraced my steps back to this young child who's sitting there, smirking. And he said, young lad, what's up? He said, you said the shorter, longer way. It's shorter because the city's right there, but it's longer because you can't really get through, or it's hard to get there to your destination. So he says, okay, give me the longer, shorter way. So the longer way takes longer to get there, but you get there. And the destination you accomplish, you accomplish your goal. So what is this? Now, it's very important to understand that both these tools are important. And I think for us, many times, there's times that we need to know which one to pull out at which time, okay? Because I think we can all relate to sometimes we need to shift the way we feel about something, and sometimes we need to just act and do. So we're going to talk about dividing these two into two sections, and not just dividing into two sections, but understanding how to utilize each tool. So what's the longer way? Again, we're going to call it the longer way because I think sometimes when I say the longer, shorter, shorter, longer, people's heads start spinning. We want to keep this as clear, concise, and practical, easy takeaways that are livable. Okay? So the long way is really contemplating, really thinking, putting intellect, putting mind, putting time into what I'm struggling with, which will lead to a new awareness, and then will shape a new opinion, and that will lead to new feelings, which will then lead to the action I need to get. Ooh, that's exhausting. So let's talk about this way. I decide I need to lose 30 pounds. I can go on a crash diet. I'll get really quick results, right? That's short, but it may not last. Or the long way would be, okay, I'm going to learn about nutrition and learn about my body, start to understand foods that fuel me, foods that don't fuel me, foods that nourish me. I'm going to start changing my habits bit by bit. I'm contemplating what my goal is. I'm aware. I start to pay attention, what's going in, what's going out, what I feel, how I feel when I eat certain foods. I'll change my opinion. So I'll start to look at food differently, possibly. I'll feel differently about things, and then I'll accomplish my goal. Okay? I'll give you an example. Many of you obviously know we live in College Station. Now, many of you don't know this, but Yassi and I could care less about football. Like literally, I married a guy, sports, irrelevant. Could care. I had brothers, I think I follow, because of my brothers, I follow football probably more than he did. Okay? Just could care less. Suddenly moved to town. Students, Aggies, they love their football. So you start to learn about the city, you start to learn about football. Does he love football? He doesn't love football. He loves his Aggies. So when the Aggies come in and it's a big game and they're all excited and they're talking about it in their kach, we could still care less about football, but we care about our Aggies. So because there's, when you think about your team, you think about your city, you think about the dynamics, you think about what's going on, you could shift and you could actually start liking football. Still hasn't happened. We don't like football. But point being, point being is that slow and steady, because there's a full picture of the city and the kach and the environment and all these things, you start to feel differently about. You can start to feel differently about things. Another example. There are many wives who complain about socks being on the floor. I don't know if anyone ever here has ever related to this, ever heard about it. For some reason, socks and laundry baskets have a hard time meeting. It may be children's socks, it may be spouses' socks, it may be whatever it is, okay? Socks have an aversion to laundry baskets. Women have an allergy to socks. Like you see the socks on the floor and you're like, seriously, the basket's right there. Why? These kids know I don't want to walk into the bathroom and slip on their socks. Like, again, if this doesn't go on in your house, kol hakavod, but if you've had this once or twice in your house, you may relate to what I'm saying, right? And I remember earlier on in my marriage, I definitely was at that socks being allergic to the socks. But I remember at the same time, there had been like two young people who were like our age who, they passed away. They were sick, whatever, tragedy. And I remember what happened was I really thought, like, the next time I walked into the room and I saw the socks, I was like, contemplation, like, really, do these socks make a difference? These socks are a sign that there are people living here. These socks are a sign that I have a husband right near me. These socks are a sign that there's children in this home. And you know what? Socks don't bother me anymore. Because when you contemplate, when you think, when you meditate, the word that really is giving. Now, I hesitate to use the word meditate, because meditate, we think of Eastern religions and mountains and crossing our legs and not talking and not eating and not sleeping. That's not the Hasidic way of meditation. For us, it's called hisbaininus, which has the word bina, contemplating, developing, really, really working through an idea. But because I had this experience and because I suddenly did it, I'm telling you, other things bother me. Now, toothbrushes bother me maybe, but the socks don't bother me anymore. Why don't they bother me? Because it's just a conscious reminder. Should the socks still make it to the laundry basket? Yeah. Do I still believe that everyone in my household has the ability to make sure the socks go into the laundry basket? Absolutely. But what happens is when we focus on contemplating a different reality, and we have a level, it brings us to a level of awareness, we change our opinion about something. And once we change our opinion, we change our emotions. And once we change our emotions, okay, now I'm not tripping out every time I see socks on the floor. Now, it could not be socks in your house. It could be something else. It could be the container that's put back that's almost empty. It could be the kid that constantly, lets you know that they're there in the least pleasant ways. But we have the ability through this long way to change the way we think about something. And I think often as humans, as women, we feel a certain way about something and we get stuck there. And then we build a whole case for that scenario, that circumstance, that understanding, instead of trying to really re-examine. So tool number one through this long way, using this tool of hisbaininus, is to really, really think. And again, not locking ourselves in isolation. And if any of you could do that, go sit outside on the top of a mountain and just be mispainin, like the Eibishter and every Godless and your family, like kol hakavod. But I think for many of us, we're being pulled in 1,000 directions. If we have 5 minutes of hisbaininus, we're rock stars. You know what I'm saying? So, but really the Alter is going to explain that this is a really powerful tool. And how does this hisbaininus happen? Again, not lofty, luftig stuff, inner dialogue. Inner dialogue. Really working through this process of Bina, which we discussed earlier, I think in class 1, we can get to this level. So now we can understand that when it comes to other people, shift the way we think. And I think for many of us, if you have children, you've seen children maybe not always manifest their best behavior, and you pick to focus, think, and re-see their behavior in a different way. Remember years ago, I had an educational coach when I was teaching 18 months to 2.5. Love teaching that age, but boy, do they know how to, they make a little bit of chaos in life. I love that age. I just 8 years in the classroom with them. They were amazing. And I remember her once saying that when a child is out of whack, their behavior, we look at the behavior, we react to the behavior, which is really what they're doing is they're waving a red flag and saying, or whatever color flag, and they're saying, hey, help. I'm not feeling aligned. It's not working. And by the way, for ourselves, and again, this may never happen to you. I'm not accusing anyone of everything, but if you've ever lost your cool and you've ever lost it, guess what? It's an inner flag also. Something's not going on. So we got to use this tool of Hispanos, use this tool of the long way to change the way we feel. That's for ourselves. That's for our children. That's for our spouses. It's for those we meet. And it changes things. Our perspective shift changes things.
Manya?
Yes.
I'm having a hard time understanding the difference between what you're saying now and between mind over heart, because it sounds the same, but
no. So mind over heart is more, okay. Mind over heart is going back to the diet analogy. I hate diet analogies because I think this diet culture is toxic and destructive, but I feel like for some reason as women, we've been so inundated with a diet culture that we can all relate to it on some level or degree. So excuse me using this analogy, but I do feel like it really does kind of do a very good job in this case. So let's give an example. The mind over heart is there is a giant whatever the food is that won't nourish you. And I'm not anti a piece of chocolate or ice cream, like go for it, enjoy life. I don't believe in this, like whatever. I'm not a nutritionist either, so I'm not going to go there, but I don't believe in all this restrictiveness and like making food a villain. So so see that from that perspective. But let's say I know I've already like eaten, I'm full, I'm nourished, and then someone brings by something that I know will bother me. I'll give you an example. Macaroni and cheese tastes delicious, hurts my stomach every time. So at that moment when I see it, so I could choose right there that like mind over, like, do I want it? Do I want not? No. Intellectually, I know, even though I want it, intellectually, I know it's not for me. Easy. But can I always do that with all foods that I have all the time that are not going to nourish me, fill me, or do what's good for my body? No. So Ma'ich Shalot Alev is an incredible tool, but could you imagine trying to do it all the time, always? Sometimes I have to change the way I see a situation. Let's go back to the parenting. Joycey, can I know how you have a few children? Yes? You're still here, my dear? I can't see you. You have a few children? I know you do, right?
Yes.
There are times, because I want to see your beautiful face as we talk, because I feel like this is an important one. There are times that you may have a child that's going to behave a certain way again and again and again, and it's not necessarily the most positive behavior. Yes? Anyone relate to that? Am I the only one with kids like that? Come on, people. I don't care. I love them. They're human. They're wonderful. But once in a while, you have a kid like that. And once in a while that, right? So Ma'ich Shalot Alev is right away when I see that child's behavior and I want to react like, what are you thinking? What are you doing? Why are you destroying everything and everyone? And why are you hurting your sister? And why are you getting into a fight? And why are you being petty? And why are you being mean? Whatever. Okay. I just put a lot of adjectives out there, right? This, by the way, thank God this is not all the same child. I just want to clarify. Okay. No, but let's say I feel that way, right? My Ma'ich Shalot Alev is right now, right here. No. Tearing into this child or this spouse right here, right now, not going to help. Put my emotions back in place. But have I changed the way I feel inside? No. I'm still frustrated with this child. I'm still frustrated when my spouse does X or Y or Z. So it's not a sustainable tool. It's a good tool. It's one that that's unique to Chabad Chassidus. Okay? But it's not long-term going to get me to a place where I've changed my parenting towards that child, or I changed my perspective towards my spouse. Do you understand now, Joycey, the difference?
Yes.
Does it make sense?
Yeah.
Okay,
So
thank
it's
you for
more,
stopping me. Huh?
no, I get it now. The mind over the heart is more in the moment. It's not long term,
Well, I know it can be, but it's exhausting if it's constantly long term. It's like it gets the job done,
but you need the tools to be able to, okay, I get it.
create inner transformation.
The tool is in there. It's just a quick emotional
Fix.
change. It could, yeah, the fix, but it's not the tool. Got it.
I
Thank you.
got to change how I see this situation. Got to change how I view this child's behavior. Got to change how I see what's going on in my home or my boss's behavior or whatever it is. Okay. And that takes a long time sometimes. And we have to work on it through this tool of Hispanos meditation. It takes work. And then how does this, so now we can understand, and thank you for clarifying, Joycey. Now we can understand how it relates to other people. How does it relate to my relationship with Hashem? How does a relationship, because really my relationship with Hashem is not separate from me. I think we sometimes have this like funny misconception. It's like Hashem is what he wants of me. There's Jewish guilt. There's so many mitzvahs. There's so many minhagim. What's the difference between them? Really, I say this to students, the most natural state for a Jew, you want to talk about a natural state for you, is living a life of Torah mitzvahs. I say this to students who are completely secular. So that's like the most natural state. I just had a conversation with my students. He's dating a girl. The girl eventually wants to have a fully kosher home. And the girl eventually wants to, keep Shabbos. And he's not there yet. And I said, but it is, yes, she knows, obviously, we're not like hoodwinking anyone. It's not like he's pretending that he wants to keep Shabbos and whatever. But I told him, like, this is the most natural state for you as a Jew. So you got to look inside and see, can I get there eventually? She's not saying you have to be there tonight, but is that even a goal? We're supposed to grow in who we are in Torah. It's just, if we're not growing, it's a problem. We need more vitamin B or whatever, wheatgrass, as I said in the beginning of class, right? So the more we learn, the more we're nourishing ourselves, the more we're nourishing our neshama, the more our neshama could really step up and voice its opinion. So this is why we have to keep learning, okay? What happens though, is when I do this long way, the longer, shorter way, right? When I do it about the way I perceive the Eibishter, it creates a shift. Now, interestingly enough, the Alter Rebbe makes distinguishes that the Beinoni, don't think that the Beinoni has to have this really high level hisbaininus, meditating on the godless of Hashem, because halavai, we should be a Baruch Hashem. We have moments in our life where we're able to see Hashem's hand. I remember once speaking to a girl, she said, look, I was an atheist, still had a child. I had a life, I wish she was agnostic. She had her first child and suddenly she's like, there must be a God. This is the most miraculous process. Here she had an experience that was like, whoa, she gave it some thought and she's like, there is something wild going on here. There's something bigger than me. So really what happens is the Alter Rebbe is going to say, don't worry, the Beinoni, we're not talking about like high level, unreachable hisbaininus on the Eibishter, meditation on the godless of Hashem. We are talking about if you stop to think about Hashem in your life, what it will happen is you'll care enough about what Hashem wants from you. And that care can lead to will change your feelings. And at the end of the day, it will change your actions. And the Alter Rebbe says very clearly, this is a basic level of love. It's a hidden love. And the Alter Rebbe ties it back. And remember in the beginning, we said Kikar, that the whole Tanya is based on the pasuk Kikar v'lecha adavar ma'id beficha b'olvavcha lasaisai. The Alter Rebbe says this is the b'olvavcha. It's there. In the beginning of the Tanya, the Alter Rebbe said that this whole Tanya is based on, that it's very close to you, not abstract, not removed, not for someone else, not at a different time, different age, different stage. We give ourselves all sorts of justifications, which is what Moshe Rabbeinu was saying to the Yidden. No, it's close to you. It's in you. Beficha, wolvavcha, your emotions. And then the Alter Rebbe says, look, it says lasaisei, to do. So when you tap in to this hidden love that's within you, remember, we have a nefesh elokis. We have a part of an Eibishter within us. So it's there. We can't even pretend it's not there. I once had a student told me, hey, Manya, I think I'm opting out of Judaism. I said, really? You should go to yeshiva. He said, excuse me? I'm opting out. I'm like, okay, so you really should go to yeshiva. And he's like, like, were you speaking the same language? Like, what's going on here? And so listen, I hate to break it to you, Eric, but there's this thing within you that you really can't get rid of. Like, I hate to be the bearer of bad news. You have this thing called an neshama, and it's not going away anytime soon. So it may not bother you now, but like maybe in 10 years, it will knock at the door and be like, hey, Eric, remember me? Or like in 90, it will like be like, hey, Eric, I'm here. Nice. So like, since it's a part of you, you can't get rid of it. He's like, yeah, well, I don't know if I believe in God, and I had very negative Jewish experiences, like so many, of our students. So I'm like, Eric, you really should go to yeshiva. Ladies, it took me 9 years. 9 years. And he finally went to yeshiva for 3 months. And he didn't come back with a long beard and tzitzis, but he came back with 2 things. I must date and marry Jewish because I need to continue the Jewish people, and putting on tefillin every day. And you know what? Knowing that he has an neshama. So we have to remember that every single person in this world has a holy, beautiful piece of Hashem in them. And we have to nourish that and nurture that. And we have to be misspined about that. So yeah, when we have a child who's struggling, or a spouse who's struggling, we have to stop and think and contemplate, how can I help them? And we have to do it also to nurture and nourish our relationship with Hashem, because it's a part of us. It's like we all this self-care. We're so into it. Moms, oh yeah, definitely go to the gym, self-care, and eat healthy self-care. And I'm, again, big fan of gym, big fan of sleeping, big fan of naps, whatever it is. You tell me you're doing something to carve out time for yourself, like go for it. I'm a big fan. But nourishing our neshama is also self-care. We don't think of it that way. But when we change the way we look at something, when we contemplate and look at it differently, then it changes how we feel about it, and then it changes our action. And that's absolutely within our realm. So what I want to do is, because I want to open up to discussions, because I know there's so much more. I love it. By the way, you should see my notes. I have like this much I want to cover, and then like we cover this much, but that's okay. We have, thank God, 8 weeks together, and there's so much more to cover. And but I really want to bounce this idea around. And maybe those of you who don't want to jump on mic, you can. I'm certainly love to see everyone and hear everyone a part of this conversation. Maybe you can write in the chat something that you feel that this can really affect. Learning to change how we feel. Or maybe you have an example. You want to unmute yourself and share. Change an example of how you looked at something differently. Through thinking through it. Through really attaching some sort of level of intentional, mindful thinking to an area you're struggling with. Does anyone want to share? Does anyone want to type in the chat something that they feel like this is a really usable tool in my life? Because I think we can relate, or if you can relate to this, I think we can relate to the idea that if we change the way if we think about something intentionally, we could change the way we feel and look at it. And you know what? Like we said in the beginning, before not everyone was there, that ultimately, Chassidus is about giving us really concrete, tangible tools, not abstract ones just for tzaddikim and elder Chassidim who sit and daven all day. For moms in 2021 that are dealing with carpool and lunches and cranky children and teething toddler or babies and laundry that's whatever, and cleaning ladies that didn't show up, and hormones and moods and cold, whatever, life.
So for me, I can what happened today.
Thank you.
So my son accidentally took like a spoon, and he knew that he was taking a meat spoon and put it in like a dairy, like a mug. And he knew that he was like, I told him, no, don't do that. And he still did it. And of course I flipped. And then like, okay, he got upset. And then he went to the room, and then I'm like, okay, calm down. And I'm like, I realized that I did something wrong. Like, that's when I like, okay, I shouldn't flip. Like, he's just a child. But, in that moment, you cannot control it, because you know that he's doing something against what you just said. Like, he knows that he's doing it like in front of your face, like, okay, like ignoring what you just said. So like, like it's very hard to control those emotions where, he's doing something like, but then of course I went to apologize, because, and explain myself. So how can I control like those feelings with what you said?
You know, it's so interesting. I actually found, first of all, Susan, thank you for jumping on and sharing. No,
I'm sorry.
no, I love it. Thank you. I really appreciate that you really asked a question that's real. And I wish that I could say that every single time I, want to not, I don't know, lose my cool. Let's go with that example I'm able to do it. But often what I actually try, and I think this is like this incredible, like I just try to say less or not to react or to have a conversation later. And I'll give you an example. I once had one of my children.
The connection was bad. I lost everything.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I hear you now.
Okay. I once had one of my children who just, you warn them, like, if you don't, you're going to lose computer time, and then they lose computer time. But instead of being like, oops, I messed up, they like start freaking out. Right. And they're like, and they get upset at you and you're the worst mommy in the world. That may not have ever happened to you, but once or twice I've heard something like that. And this child, I just said, I hear you, but it's cause and effect. Like less is more. I find for me, I by nature an overexpressor. So I need to like work on myself to not be an overexpressor, right? Less is more. I hear you. I see you're frustrated. Cause and effect. And then I went to revisit it with this child later. I'm a big fan of revisiting things. Bedtime's a wonderful time. The next day's a wonderful time when we're not feeling so emotionally charged, because often what really the emotion that's going to the table is not about helping the child take responsibility or shift or grow or evolve. It's really about me. I am so angry right now. This child didn't listen to me. Well, that's not what's really going on here. What's really going on here, there's maybe communication, respect, the child's not understanding the boundaries. There's other things that are going on here. So I really like to, at that moment, stick by like less is more. And then I like to revisit things. And I remember I went to that child and I said, what happened today? And they said, I was so mad at you. I lost my computer. I said, really? When I couldn't use the computer. And I said, really, but why couldn't you use the computer? Well, because I went overtime or whatever it was. I don't remember what it was. It was a while ago. I said, really? So what would have happened if you didn't go overtime? Well, then I would have still been able to use the computer. I think they lost the computer the next day because they went overtime that day. That's what happened. Well, what would happen if you didn't? Then I'd still have the computer time for tomorrow. So I looked at the child and I said, isn't it interesting? Because now I'm not angry. There's no emotion. The child's not angry. I said, isn't it interesting that instead of taking responsibility and realizing that had you ended on time, you would still have your computer time tomorrow. You turned your anger and your frustration out at me, and you got angry at me. The child went very quiet, because now again, they could reflect. They could see things a little more objectively, logically. And we're not on emotional and reaction. And the child was quiet, and the child said, the Yetzer Hara is really tricky. So at that moment, the child is now empowered to understand this is not about cause and effect and punishment. I still stuck by my rules. In this case, the child, less is more. When the child does the spoon in front of you, what a shame. Now we can't use the spoon. And now it's a question whether we could use this ice cream. Let's put the ice cream on the side till we find out if we could use it, because we used the wrong spoon with the wrong cereal milk, ice cream, whatever it was. Now we have to find out. Then we're empowering the child to also to also work through it. And then on the other end, I think when we do lose our cool and we can still take responsibility and say, I could have reacted differently. I actually probably, in that case, I would probably have a conversation with the child either the next day. How could this have gone differently? How could I have reacted differently? Because I think when we role model to our children, we're thinking, evolving, growing human beings. We don't have it all figured out, unless all of you do. I don't. I tell my kids, I'm going to mess up. I do the best I can. I'm not intentionally. I don't cackle and I think, how can I ruin your life? But I'm a human being, and Hashem gave me the job, not a malach. If Hashem gave it to a malach, then guess what? You'd be raised by perfection. But he gave me this flawed human who has miles and chesronos, just like every other human being. I think they really appreciate that honesty, that we're working, evolving, growing humans. So in this case, I would probably the next day, maybe when I'm a little less emotional, he's a little, take responsibility. I realize, I was thinking about what happened yesterday and I realized I overreacted. I probably could have reminded you about the spoon without losing my cool.
So he's 4 years old.
You know what a 4-year-old can understand.
I know. No, and I did it right away when I like sit down and I'm like, okay, I calm down and I went and I like apologized to him the way I acted, like reacted to him. And like he understood and he's like, okay, he apologized to me and he's like, I'm sorry. But at that age, they act so quickly and they're not like us.
Yeah, no, they are impulsive. 3-year-olds are notoriously impulsive.
We're also like that. We're also like that, but it's like a two-way. But it's just like funny that you say like react, like, and I always the things that I always do understand after the fact.
Yeah.
I do apologize.
You know what? I want to say something. I think it's easy for us to catch ourselves afterwards. But here's where, even with a 4-year-old, I would say, I was thinking about what happened yesterday. I love you and I do not like yelling at you. And I yelled. I probably could have talked differently to you. What can we do next time about spoons so you can do what you need to do? And I know I'm going to work on what I need to do. I would do that. Even to a 4-year-old, they're capable. I think often we underestimate how much emotional intelligence our children have, and we actually dialogue with them. And I'm not talking about creating a bunch of lawyers where everything is a negotiable discussion. I am not talking about that. And you're feeling, I remember once I was at a parenting lecture and the lady was describing how a kid bit 3 people and then she had a conversation with the child. Why are you feeling this way? Why are you biting? I'm like, no. Right away, if the child just bit 3 people in a room, you don't have a conversation. The child is removed from the room. You don't bite. We're at a party. There are people came to have fun. You don't bite. Later, tomorrow, the next day, I could have a conversation. What was going on? I noticed at the party you bit, or before I went to the part, or make a mental note before you're going to a party again, you revisit that scenario, not harping, not obsessing, but you say, we're going to a party. And I remember last time we went to, it's a statement. I remember last time we went to a party, it was a little hard for you. You bit 3 people. What can we do about it? And I think even a 4-year-old's capable of because it gives them a window inward, and it's aligned completely with Chassidus. It gives them a window inward, because really what the Alter was trying to give us is a mirror inward, and it gives a child a mirror inward. Even teenagers, they're capable of it. I think we give up too quickly.
It's interesting that to revisit it. Revisit it when you apologize, but it's to revisit it the next day or that.
I would say the next time you anticipate such a behavior, I wouldn't harp on it or obsess over, because then it gives it too much energy. But right. I would revisit it. The next time he's in the kitchen and says, "Oh, I want to really get food," and I say, "Yes, do you remember what happened last time with the spoon? What can we do differently this time?" That's what I would say. Very casual, very non-emotional, just very factual. That's what I would do.
Okay.
Ladies, we have so much more to cover. We're going to end here. Unless anyone wants to jump in, if there was anything that was unclear, I would love to hear. Like, I'm here. I feel free also to voice note me. I did mention that hopefully it's clear that it's a subject I'm super passionate about. And I do believe that we gained a new tool tonight, understanding that when we shift through. Yeah, go ahead.
Just quickly. So I pulled up to my son's school and I saw a whole bunch of kids literally like yelling at a teacher. And I was like beyond horrified. And I'm like, what? Like, I was so upset. Like, I'm like, what do I do? And then I'm like, okay, let's revisit this, because this is like their coach and they like this coach. So I tried to trying to shift my thoughts about the whole situation and tried to figure out what was going on. But like the anger was like still building. I was like, just how could I almost wanted to stop these kids. I mean, they were literally like attacking the teacher. Anyway, my son gets into the car and I'm like, what's going on? The teacher got another job and he was no longer their coach, and they were upset at him for leaving them. They loved him so much and they loved him. And they were just devastated that he had left. And I was like, it just goes to show you, first of all, what we see is not always what's really there. And if there really is positive, if you look at things in a positive way and you do the whole Hispaniness and you just reframe the way the situation is, it can totally, it's a totally different situation than what it appeared to at first. So.
I love the fact that you mentioned reframing, because it's true. Reframing is very trendy. We've been doing this for a few years. And so, yeah, we can shift the way we see something. Now, I probably would still tell my son, FYI, you should never talk to an adult that way. Like, I probably would still have to, like, I would have to say that, like, it would have to come out of my mouth. Like, I'm glad to hear, you know, whatever, but we still have to be conscious of the way the words that come out of our mouth. But it is cool to know if that's the son, I'm telling you, okay?
It wasn't him. It wasn't
I know,
him.
I'm kidding, I'm joking. I just say a cute little
But it wasn't my child. It wasn't my child,
Yeah,
but it was other
no,
kids.
Baruch Hashem. I'm just teasing. I'm joking. But I love what you're saying, because I think as parents, sometimes we react very emotionally because we're bringing, here's something that's really important. And maybe we need to talk about it next time, because I see people are dropping off as we like go over time. We bring ourselves to the table in our parenting, in our emotional reactions. We bring all of our baggage and all of our traumas and all of our issues. They come with us. And our reactions are absolutely bringing that to the table. But when we gain more self-awareness, which I think Tanya gives you, like I said, I think in class too, you go so deep into yourself, but then it's all about getting beyond yourself. But when we do that, when we take the time to do that, I feel like it's a game changer. And it's not just a game changer for us, it's a game changer for the whole family. Because we strengthen ourselves, it strengthens Shalom Bayis, it strengthens the children, it strengthens the grandchildren. It just creates a shift. So ladies, let's Hatzlacha, having many more Beinani moments this week. May we all pick one thing that maybe we could be misspaining about, and recognize that even if it feels so abstract, you know, my relationship with the Eibusher at times could feel abstract. Let's find little moments to really shift our and tap into that Ava, that love that we have, and that neshama that we have within that is a part of Hashem. L'chaim, have a wonderful night.
Thank you, Manya.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Very much, Tanya.
A pleasure. I really, really enjoy
Thank you so much.
our Monday nights.
Thank you.
Bye. Have a great week.
Yes.
Maya?
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you.
Just a little thought. Would you call it accountability? Like,
Miss Hispaininos accountability, I wouldn't call it accountability. I think later you get into that. That's more cheshbon and nefesh, and that's more, the Alter Rebbe definitely discusses where later on when we have guilt and shame and we're failing, how we carve out time and space for it, for accountability, but I wouldn't call that this here.
okay.
I think it can lead to accountability. Meaning if I'm struggling in a certain area and I take the time to think and feel and shift the way I see the situation, and it changes how I feel about it, then it leads to accountability. But I wouldn't say that here's where the Alter Rebbe is like, here, accountability. It may help us become more accountable. Okay? Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you. No, just at the end, like it kind of felt like it was going that way.
Right.
But yeah, we're not there yet. I see what you mean.
No, good. I'm telling you, there's so much here. Like, and remember, we're literally doing like the snapshot from the aerial view. Like, there's so much. Tanya's like amazing.
No, but it's important. It's the long. We're doing the work, and we can't do the work if we don't.
I agree. I agree. Listen, it's thank God, as long as we're alive, we have time to do the work, and we keep working and keep growing.
Amen. Baruch Hashem. Thank you, Maya.
L'chaim, wonderful.
Thank you so much.
Have a wonderful Monday night, and I hope the rest of your week is successful and wonderful.
Thank you. You too.